Hi, welcome to Steel City Rings TikTok and podcast. I am Zach Franciscus here with Bob Quinn, and wish we were here in better circumstances considering that there's no offensive tackles on the injury report. But Bob, we're not in a good place right now, despite that. Do you want to explain why and why your background looks like that?
Yeah, I'm lighting a candle for Broderick Jones's career. The mood is somber. The black background, it's supposed to be, yeah, metaphor for a funeral. I know Zach thought it looked like Thanksgiving, but it's not Thanksgiving. It's definitely
You're not
not
thankful.
Thanksgiving. We
No
are not
thankful here.
thankful for that Dan Moore Jr. and Troy Fatanu are starting at the tackle spots in Denver. It is absolutely ridiculous. We said it on our podcast. We said it when we guested on the Steel City or Steel Sanctuary, Steeler Sanctuary podcast that it is coaching malpractice. It is absolutely ridiculous. And we're going to go into some detail. But before that, those of you who are thinking, oh, it's just a couple of fans on the internet are upset. No, we got facts and figures. We brought receipts, but there are other people who are just as upset about this.
They do. We got Filipponi, who really doesn't care why. Like, it doesn't matter at this point. Broderick Jones losing his job to an untested rookie who missed most of the preseason and an awful left tackle they spent the last two drafts trying to replace is not good, and that's true. That's there's nothing good about this, and then it's followed up by Chris Muller echoing what Bob's saying. That just baffled because of there is inconsistency ever since the season started. We should have been more worried last season with the moving around of not knowing what to do with Broderick Jones. I didn't know it was a precursor to this year. So it's not just us, and it's not just people directly in Pittsburgh media. We have Angry Yinzer here who's saying exactly what we did. Why does Dan Moore get to tell the coaching staff he isn't comfortable on the right and have his word be gospel? Why does the 14th overall pick, the guy drafted to be the franchise left tackle, have to be the one to learn both positions and then get benched when he's done nothing to deserve being benched? He's done everything this staff has asked and then some, all at the appeasement of Dan Moore Jr. Tomlin's inconsistency with his messaging is so infuriating. That is wonderfully put by the angry Yinzer, who is living up to his name at that point.
Yeah, I don't get it. So one guy who we drafted in the fourth round, who has been, and we'll go into the numbers in a minute, has been the worst graded tackle according to Pro Football Focus. And I know we complain about Pro Football Focus when they disparage TJ, and now it looks like we're citing Pro Football Focus. Look, are they good at their job grading players? No. But the bottom line is that most NFL teams go by their grades. So yeah, we're going to use them. Are we still going to attack it if when they grade Myles Garrett better than TJ? Yeah, we're still going to attack it. But it's a baseline to use them for. The worst graded tackle, not left tackle, not right tackle, tackle period, starting tackle in his 3-year career is Dan Moore in the entire NFL. So now you're going to take the guy you traded up to get 14th round draft 14th round or 14th overall pick in 2022, and you're going to ask him to learn to play right tackle, get him hurt on the first day of practice with his right elbow because Trey Essex suggested that he thought the punch right arm looked weak in the game he gave up 3 sacks to Rousseau in the preseason. He got that injury on the first day of practice. And I'm calling right now, where is the NFL on this? Because I've heard a lot of people on social media. I put it out earlier today that as far as I'm concerned, Broderick should demand a trade. And I got some feedback on it. And people were like, oh, what's he done? And he's only in his second year. And why this and why that? Why should he put up with them playing him out of position, got him hurt to where he looked bad? And let's face it, last week he didn't look bad. He didn't get very good PFF grades for the first game because he ended up giving up 2 sacks. But I heard Steve Palozzolo on the PM team kind of explain that away that, hey, yes, because he gave up the sacks, it lowered his grade, but overall he thought he played a very good game at right tackle. So I don't get it. I don't understand. We have some numbers, facts, and figures, but I'll let Zach say a couple words before we get into that because I'm just beyond disgusted.
Yeah, I came into this season trying to focus on positive, wanting to move away from the Pickett and the Canada and the negativity and the embarrassment, all that. It's the more I look around, the more I see people in Pittsburgh media just trying to desperately explain this away or desperately stick to Dan Moore for no reason. And what you just said, the biggest thing people say about Dan Moore is that, well, he's a consistent starter in Pittsburgh. He is the, that doesn't matter if you're terrible at your job because we've known that we've trying to build up the offensive line. And what we were going for is Isaac Seumalo, the best offensive lineman coming into the season. We're hoping won't be by the end. And that's not saying anything about Isaac. We want the other guys to grow. Dan Moore hasn't grown. There's been no growth. And I love what Angry Inzer says. Why on earth does someone who hasn't earned it get to dictate where he plays? I'm not. This is one of those Matt Canada situations where I don't understand why we're holding so firm onto him. So, but the numbers
And
back us up. It's not just us.
yeah, and Chris Muller made that point a lot today, actually over the last couple of days. So let's take a look real quick. Dan Moore has started 51 games in his NFL career. And in these 51 games, twice, he's had a score of 80 plus. Once in 2022, once this season. The one game he played this season, it's actually the second highest graded game of his entire career. He has had Broderick Jones only started one game at left tackle. And I said this the other day on the podcast, and now I really mean it. Broderick Jones played one game at left tackle in his career. He got a 74.8 grade in that game. Dan Moore, in 51 career starts, has had a higher grade than that 6 times. For those of you scoring at home, that's almost 12%. So we have a 12% chance that Dan Moore, not hey, guess the coaching staff said in practice he's better. We've seen Broderick on the field. We've seen Dan Moore on the field. 12 times out of 100, one time out of I think it's 8 or not, one time out of 8, he will play a better game than Broderick Jones is capable of. It is absolutely ridiculous. 62% of his career has been spent in the 50 to 69 range. Okay, that's average to below average. Never mind the almost 16% of the time that he's been terrible. He's gotten graded a 40 or below. That's really bad. So now we're looking at a guy and we're justifying somehow, and some fans are, not a lot, but fans and some of the media members are justifying that the one time we saw Broderick Jones play a position and he played it better than Dan Moore plays it 88% of the time, that somehow Dan Moore is better in practice and therefore deserves to be on the field. I know he used to help Ben Roethlisberger up when he got him sacked, but that's not enough to justify this. And let's get real, folks. We are not re-signing Dan Moore at the end of this season. You think we're going to pay franchise left tackle money to Dan Moore? We're not. We're letting him go at the end of the year. And we got an 88% chance that Broderick will play better in Denver on Sunday. So why the heck is Dan Moore on the field?
And for anyone saying, I've seen a lot of excuses about, oh, well, the reason right now is because with the elbow injuries, you don't want the blind side. You caused the elbow injuries by misplaying him. So this issue was before the elbow. Now people just have an excuse for why it's not happening.
And it's not even,
there's
Zach, just to interrupt you for a second. It's not even really an excuse because he's not on the injury report. So what are you saying? The team is lying to the NFL but telling the truth to the fan base? Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, that's best case scenario right now. The worst part of this is best case scenario that the Steelers are lying. In any situation, when that's the best case scenario, something's going on. And this is just feeding more and more into the fact that both the Steelers and Mike Tomlin have an inability to progress players if they don't come to them already able to do it themselves. And nothing has proven otherwise at this point. So honestly, I hope we win, but yet again, I don't know how much more I want to reward bad behavior, because if they look at what Dan Moore did last week, which, okay, you can say it was okay at best. Most of the time, it collapsed inward when he really had to keep pressure off. If that's what you want to use as your bar for what we won in Pittsburgh, goodness, that's embarrassing.
I mean, it's absolutely a disservice to Broderick Jones. You traded up to get this guy. Brian Baldinger, who's probably the preeminent expert in the media on offensive linemen, said that he thought Broderick Jones was better than Andrew Thomas, who's an All-Pro. He had one bad year with the Giants and then got really good. He thought Broderick Jones was better than Andrew Thomas last year when he came out. We played him one game and he played good. And he didn't play against the Sisters of the Poor. Not that there's any of those in the NFL. He did that against the Baltimore Ravens. They were a monster defense, and he was awesome in that game. I don't get it. And let's be honest, he didn't play bad right tackle last year when they moved him over. He knows he's out of position. He didn't really play bad right tackle on Sunday. And now you got the guy who did good soldier, did what the coaches wanted him to do. I'll learn both sides. I'll play anywhere you want. No problem, coach. Oh, yeah? Sit down. Because the guy who refuses to do that, we're going to let him play. I am convinced that this is Mike Tomlin's ego run amok, trying to show up Omar Khan and Andy Weidel. Well, maybe you shouldn't have picked that guy. You should have picked Joey Porter at 14 or 17 instead of 32 when they got him. I'm apoplectic. I don't understand this, and I'm not going to root for the Steelers to lose, but I'm genuinely concerned now that the plan is to have Turnstile Moore at left tackle come in and get a hit on Justin Fields, and now all of a sudden we got Kyle Allen on the field.
Yeah, that's a genuine concern, that might be the only thing to jar the Steelers into realizing this, is that our quarterback gets another one, because we already have a hurt one. So there's no upside to this, because right now I'm just hoping that we get through Denver, because it's not just the passing game of protecting the quarterback. I'm tired of seeing Najee push through two defenders before he gets to the line. It's not fair to Najee. It's not fair to our offense. It's not fair to the rest of the offensive line, because the other four are the only reason Dan Moore had that good of a grade. That's the only reason. It wasn't Dan Moore on his own.
And look at it. I'm telling you right now, the left side of the line should have been and would have been, had he not got hurt, Isaac Seumalo, and it should have been Broderick Jones and then Darnell Washington. That should have been the strength of our running game. And instead, we're going to play Dan Moore, Spencer Anderson, because Isaac's hurt. And not to disparage Spencer Anderson, I thought he played pretty well this past Sunday. And I think he's doing the best he can. He's not Isaac, but there's a future at guard for him. We've turned a strength into a weakness, and it's intentional. I understand maybe you want a veteran next to Anderson because he's a rookie, but I mean, come on. I mean, at this point, you got all young offensive linemen. Bite the bullet. Learn against a team that you know defensively you're going to be able to control Bo Nix. You could always go to Dan Moore during the game if it doesn't work. But I'll bet dollars to donuts you put Broderick where he belongs at left tackle and you let him start playing there. We're going to see consistently above average play. You know what we get with Dan Moore? Consistently average to below average play. It's not me saying it. It's PFF saying it. And again, whether you put anything in their grades or not, the NFL sure does. Well, everybody but the Steelers.
Pretty much. So let us know in the comments if you agree with us. I don't really know how you could disagree. In some way, I think everyone who cheers for the Steelers knows something's amiss, even if you're not exactly sure what. So we'll be watching the Denver game and hoping that everyone stays healthy, hoping that in spite of Dan Moore being on the field, that we can win again. And if it has to be another 18-10 game, I'll take it. But let's stop rewarding bad behavior. So, for the Steel City Rings TikTok and podcast. Yes. For the Steel City Rings podcast, TikTok, and all sorts.